I am Margaret Hale, 62, a retired ICU nurse and the mother of one, Daniel. Snow clung to the stone steps of St. Bartholomew's as the casket inched forward. When the lid hovered for a breath, Rebecca, my daughter-in-law, leaned into my shoulder like she was offering comfort and whispered, "You have 1 week to get out." The program creased in my fist. I kept my eyes on the priest's mouth, watching words about mercy and rest drift into the cold air like smoke. I didn't turn. I didn't give her the satisfaction. Daniel's cologne still lived in the wool of my coat, and the scent pulled a thread through my chest, tight enough to hurt. I have lived in that house for 7 years, paid into the down payment, when Daniel was laid off planted tomatoes, that never learned the difference between my hands and his. Rebecca knows this. She also knows where the spare keys are, where the deed should be, where grief makes people careless. "Such strength," someone murmured behind me. "So young to be a widow." I almost laughed. My jaw locked instead. Rebecca stepped away to greet a new arrival, eyes glassy, black dress, fitted like a decision she made days ago. She touched my shoulder as if to steady me the way you pat a dog before you shut the door on it. The pallbearers moved. The lid settled. My son disappeared inch by inch from the world, and I memorized the soundwood hinges, the soft thud of finality, so I would never forget the exact moment my anger learned how to stand up straight. At the reception, people would expect stories, warmth, a mother's gratitude. I could play that part. I had for years. But there, with snow melting into my shoes and the priest asking us to bow our heads, I made a different promise. I would leave this courtyard without a scene. I would ride in Daniel's car, smelling like him, sitting beside the woman who had just declared war. And before that week was over, I would make sure she understood whose house she was trying to empty. The ride back from the church was silent except for the hum of the tires over salted pavement. Daniel's car still smelled like the cedar oil he used to rub into the dashboard, and it hit me in waves, sharp enough to make me want to open the window in the middle of February. Rebecca kept both hands on the wheel, face forward, no more small talk than you'd have with a stranger in an elevator. When we pulled into the driveway, the porch light was still on from the night before. She stepped out, first heels clicking against the icy concrete, and moved briskly to unlock the door. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of cinnamon someone had baked that morning. The living room was already filling with coats and polite chatter as neighbors and friends came in for the reception. Rebecca moved through them like she was hosting a charity gala, offering wine and handshakes, her voice pitched in that perfect register of sympathy. I stayed near the kitchen island, holding a mug I didn't drink from watching her. That's when I noticed the first thing our family photo from Daniel's college graduation was gone from the wall by the stairs. The empty nail hole caught the light like a missing tooth. Later, when most of the guests had drifted away and the hum of conversation had faded, I walked down the hall to my bedroom. The door stood wide open. My quilt was folded at the foot of the bed, the lamp unplugged. 3 drawers in my dresser sat half open, nearly empty. My jewelry box was gone. In the closet, 2 cardboard boxes sat stacked, black marker spelling out Mom's stuff. I stood there for a long moment, my hands still at my sides, the quiet pressing against my ears. Rebecca was in the dining room now, her voice low but cheerful as she poured herself another glass of wine. I stepped into the doorway. "Did you move my things?" She glanced up, smile soft as velvet. "Just organizing. I can call a moving company when you're ready." I said nothing. But inside, I could feel the clock she'd set for me start ticking down. The next morning, the kitchen was quiet. No clink of mugs, no smell of fresh coffee, just the faint hum of the refrigerator. Rebecca sat at the dining table with her laptop open, tapping away as if it were any other Tuesday. She looked up briefly, a polite smile flickering. "Morning. I've been looking into quotes for movers." She said, her eyes already back on the screen. "I didn't ask for movers," I replied, keeping my voice even. "Right. But you said you wanted to handle things on your timeline. I figured this might help." She took a slow sip from her mug like we were discussing the weather. I opened the fridge. My labeled containers of leftovers were gone, replaced with neatly stacked Tupperware that wasn't mine. I shut the door without comment and walked into the living room. Daniel's recliner, the one he'd had since his first apartment, was missing. In its place sat a faux leather chair that looked like it came from a showroom. His throw blanket was folded and stuffed behind the TV stand as if it were a rag. "Where's Daniel's recliner?" I asked. She didn't look up from the laptop. It was old, didn't fit the room anymore. "It's been 9 days," I said quietly. Her fingers stilled on the keys. "I'm not going to sit in a dead man's chair, Margaret." The way she said his name like it was a paperweight, not a person, made something in my chest burn hot. I stepped outside before the heat in my voice betrayed me. The February air bit at my cheeks, but it steadied me. Standing on the porch, I took out my phone and called the number I'd kept since Daniel gave it to me. Harris, the attorney who had helped us update our wills years ago. His assistant said he could see me that afternoon. I didn't tell Rebecca where I was going. I just grabbed my coat, my bag, and drove away the house, shrinking in the rearview mirror. If she thought I'd be walking out of that door for good, she was about to learn I had other plans. Harris's office sat on the corner of Main Street, a brick building with frosted glass doors that looked the same as the day Daniel and I first walked in. The moment I stepped inside, Harris stood from behind his desk, his face softening. "Margaret, I'm so sorry." Daniel was a good man. I nodded, swallowing down the lump that threatened to choke me. He was. I told him everything: Rebecca's whisper at the funeral, the missing photo, the boxes labeled with my name, and most of all, the deed that wasn't where it should be. Harris listened without interrupting, his hands folded on the desk, eyes sharp in a way that told me he was already mapping out our next steps. "You said your name was on the deed." "Yes, from the day we bought it. I helped with the down payment when Daniel lost his job. I paid by cashier's check. Do you still have proof of that contribution?" I nodded. "Somewhere. I've kept every receipt worth keeping." His gaze sharpened further. "Then we may have something. If your name is on the recorded deed and we have proof of financial contribution, she can't legally remove you. She might bluff, but she can't win in court." I sat back, breathing for what felt like the first time in days. So what now? Find the original deed and the cashier's check receipt. Make copies of everything. Bring them to me. And until then, don't confront her directly. She'll tip her hand if she thinks you're in the dark. By the time I left his office, the sun was already slipping behind the hills, staining the snow pale orange. My grip on the steering wheel was tight, not from fear, but from focus. When I pulled into the driveway, Rebecca was in the hallway, her phone pressed to her ear. "No, she doesn't know anything," she said, her voice dropping when she saw me. "It's handled." I didn't ask. I just walked past her up the attic ladder and into the dust and shadows where Daniel's old boxes waited. If the deed was here, I was going to find it tonight. The attic smelled like cedar and old cardboard. Daniel had kept nearly everything from his 20s up here: college textbooks, army records, a guitar he never quite learned to play. I pushed aside a stack of winter coats and found the boxes marked "Home Purchase." My pulse kicked harder. Kneeling on the floorboards, I pulled one closer and tore off the packing tape. Inside were closing statements, home insurance forms, bank loan approvals. I flipped through each page until my fingers stopped on a manila envelope labeled in Daniel's handwriting, "Final Deed." I slid the papers out and stared at the crisp black letters, my name and Daniel's, side by side, notarized and dated. My breath came slow, steady. She'd been bluffing. Or worse, she knew and hoped I didn't. I tucked the deed inside my coat and climbed down. Rebecca was standing at the bottom of the ladder, arms crossed. Looking for something, she asked, her smile, tight eyes scanning my coat. "Just some old paperwork. Nothing important," I said, brushing past her. "That's good. I wouldn't want you to stress yourself." I went straight to my room, closed the door, and locked it. I made 3 copies of the deed, scanned it into my email, and labeled the folder, "For lawyer only." 1 copy went into my bag, 1 into a file box under my bed, and 1 into a spot Rebecca would never think to look behind the false back of my dresser. At 9 that night, she appeared in the doorway holding 2 glasses of wine. "We should clear the air," she said, settling across from me on the couch. I took the glass but didn't drink. "Aaron," she caught herself. "Daniel always said this house was for us, for our future family. I don't want it to get ugly." I met her gaze. "Have you spoken to a lawyer?" Her eyes flickered. "No, I didn't think it was necessary. Maybe it is." The way her jaw tightened told me she'd heard the warning even if I never raised my voice. The next morning, the air in the house felt different, thin, like something had been siphoned out. I went to the kitchen and found Rebecca standing at the counter, scrolling on her phone. She didn't look up. "Morning," she said, "just clearing out some junk from the garage." Through the open door, I could see Daniel's fishing gear propped against the wall, ready to be hauled away. I didn't comment. I walked to my bedroom only to find the top drawer of my nightstand locked. That drawer had never had a lock. I fetched a flathead screwdriver from the utility closet and pried it open. My prescription bottle was gone. So was the small envelope of cash I kept for emergencies. I sat on the bed, breathing through my teeth, the burn in my chest threatening to climb higher. I needed focus, not anger. That's when I remembered Daniel's old filing cabinet in the office. The third drawer down was labeled Refinance Options. Inside, I found newer mortgage statements dated less than a year ago with both our names clearly printed. Rebecca's wasn't anywhere. I took a photo of each page and backed them up to my cloud storage. From the hallway, I heard her voice on speakerphone. "Yeah, she's still here. I know it's awkward, but she doesn't have any real claim." A pause. "No, her name's not on the utilities or tax bills. It'll be fine." I stepped into the hall just enough for her to hear me. "You should be careful what you say in this house. The walls are thin." Her head jerked up, eyes wide. "Everything okay?" "Just fine," I said, walking past her toward the kitchen. I poured myself a cup of coffee, letting the silence stretch until she drifted away. I didn't need her to know I'd just found another piece of the puzzle. 3 days later, Rebecca announced over coffee that she was hosting a remembrance evening for Daniel's friends and coworkers. She said it like she was talking about a casual brunch, not a gathering in the home of a man barely gone 2 weeks. I stayed quiet as she moved through the kitchen, pouring almond milk into her mug, ignoring the second cup I'd set out for her. She didn't ask for my help preparing, which was fine by me. That night, the first guest arrived just after 6, a tall man in a navy overcoat, who introduced himself as Kyle, a friend from Daniel's old job. He hugged me, leaned in and whispered, "He talked about you all the time. Said you were the one person he could always count on." My throat tightened, but I managed a nod. More people followed, neighbors, a few of Rebecca's Pilates friends, even someone from Daniel's college days. I stood near the back wall holding a glass of water, watching Rebecca glide between guests with a wine glass in hand, recounting stories that felt rehearsed. When a woman asked how I was holding up, I said, "As well as I can, considering I still live here." "Oh," she said, surprised. "Rebecca told me the house was hers." I smiled faintly. Easy mistake. An hour later, Rebecca caught me in her sights. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. She crossed the room and asked if we could speak privately. In the hallway, her voice dropped. "Are you trying to start something?" I answered a question honestly, I said. Her tone cooled. "These people don't need to hear about paperwork. Then maybe don't throw a wine mixer in a house you're trying to erase him from." Her jaw flexed. "If you don't want to be here, you can leave." "Oh, I'm not going anywhere." She leaned in close, her whisper just for me. "You think you're clever, but you don't know how this works. I'll make sure you regret staying." I didn't flinch. She walked away with that same polite smile, greeting the next guest like nothing had been said. The morning after the gathering, I found Rebecca in the kitchen wearing her robe and holding a crumpled tissue. She stared out the window until she noticed me, then turned, forcing a shaky smile. I didn't want to say anything until I was sure she began placing a hand on her stomach. "I'm pregnant, Margaret. About 8 or 9 weeks." Her words sat in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. Daniel had been gone for 10 weeks. I didn't move, didn't blink. She reached into her robe pocket and pulled out a sonogram photo, placing it on the table, like a winning card. I picked it up, turning it slowly, noting the clinic name, her name, and most telling of all, the date, not 10 weeks ago, but 4. I used a donor, she explained quickly. Daniel and I talked about it just in case. He wanted me to have a piece of him. I didn't believe a word. Daniel would have told me something that important. But I didn't argue. I simply handed the photo back. I hope you understand now why it's so important for me to have stability for the baby's sake. She added, her eyes searching my face. I nodded slowly, letting her think I was softening. But the second she left the room, I took out my phone and matched the sonogram date to a screenshot I'd taken of a file from her tote bag, both from the same week. I forwarded the images to Harris with a short note. "We need to talk." Within an hour, he called me. "This could actually help us," he said. "If she's claiming pregnancy for legal advantage, we can subpoena her medical records. If she's faking it, it's fraud. She's baiting me to react," I told him. "Then don't. Let her think you're buying it." So I smiled at her comments over the next few days about the baby's room and how much space we'll need. And each time she tested me, I gave her nothing. I was done reacting. I was collecting. By Friday, the bait came in the form of a manila envelope slid under my bedroom door. Across the front, in bold black marker, it read, "Urgent, 48 hours notice." Inside was a typed eviction notice that looked like it had been pulled from a free template online. It claimed I had 48 hours to vacate due to emotional instability and personal threats. At the bottom, in smaller print, it warned that failure to comply could result in law enforcement involvement and elder neglect charges. Elder neglect. That was the card she'd decided to play. I read it twice, my pulse steady, not from shock, but from the realization that she'd just handed me another piece of evidence to crush her with. I slid the document into a new folder alongside the deed, the refinance records, and the photos of her forged will. Within the hour, I was in Harris's office without an appointment. "She's threatening you with elder neglect while you've been documenting her harassment." He shook his head. "This moves us past civil dispute. We're talking pre-fraud litigation now. I laid out everything, fake pregnancy timeline, altered documents, the eviction notice." Harris's expression hardened. "We'll file a motion to freeze any property transfers, request a court review of the will, and submit a fraud alert to probate. We can stop her before she even gets close to selling the house." On my way home, I stopped at a print shop. I had 3 bound copies made of every piece of evidence, one for Harris's office, one for my safe deposit box, and one hidden in my room where she'd never think to look. When I walked in, Rebecca was on a video call in the kitchen headset on, laughing. "Yeah, I'll have access to the place within 2 weeks tops," she told whoever was on the other end. She didn't know the court would have the final say. And soon, the court date came faster than either of us expected. On the morning of the hearing, Rebecca emerged from her room in a cream blazer, clutching the sonogram photo like a badge of innocence. Her attorney stayed close, voice low and gentle as they walked into the probate courtroom together. When the judge called us forward, her lawyer began with a performance fit for daytime television, Rebecca as the grieving young widow preparing for motherhood, forced to share her home with an uncooperative mother-in-law. He spoke of compassion, stability, and honoring the late husband's wishes. Harris didn't bother matching the theatrics. He started by sliding the original deed across the table, the one with my name and Daniel's in black ink notarized and filed. Then came the refinance records from last year, again only our names. No Rebecca. Next, he pulled up side-by-side comparisons of Daniel's actual signature and the one on Rebecca's will. The forged version looked like it had been traced by someone guessing at his handwriting. Then he showed the metadata from her laptop, proving she'd opened and edited the file herself weeks after Daniel's death. The judge leaned forward, examining each exhibit. "Counselor, this is extremely clear," he said finally. "Mrs. Hale retains legal co-ownership of the property. All eviction claims are void. The will is subject to a fraud investigation." Rebecca's lawyer whispered something urgently, but her face was already crumbling, her shoulders sinking like she'd been carrying weight she could no longer pretend wasn't there. Harris gathered the papers with quiet precision. As we left the courtroom, he said, "Now we wait. She'll either push back or pack her bags." Outside, I checked my phone. An email from the court confirmed full recognition of my ownership. The chill in the February air didn't bite anymore. It felt clean, almost sharp enough to wake me up from months of watching my back. Rebecca walked ahead, the sonogram photo gone from her hand, her steps quick and clipped. She knew this battle had shifted, and it wasn't in her favor anymore. The house was too quiet the next morning, not peaceful but charged like the silence before a storm. Rebecca sat at the dining table in all black, a legal pad in front of her covered in scribbled names and phone numbers. She didn't look up when I walked in. "You think you've won?" she said flatly. I poured my coffee, letting the sound of it fill the space. It wasn't about winning. It was about the truth. She pushed back her chair, the legs screeching against the tile. "You don't get to take everything from me." I met her eyes. "You tried to erase me from a house I helped build with a fake will and a fake pregnancy to back it up. You didn't just try to take the house, you tried to rewrite Daniel's life." Her mouth opened, then closed again. Whatever defense she'd rehearsed didn't land this time. I leaned forward slightly. "Pack your things. I'm giving you more time than you gave me." She grabbed her phone and left without another word. Hours later, I heard the sound of packing tape ripping and boxes shifting in the hall. By Sunday, the space outside her bedroom was lined with cardboard, some labeled, some not. When she finally approached me in the kitchen, she looked exhausted. "I'll be out by Friday," she said. I nodded once. It was never yours to give back. The day she left, 2 friends helped her load the last of her things into her SUV. She lingered at the door, clutching her purse. "You don't have to do this. Neither did you," I replied, and closed the door gently but firmly. I watched from the window as she stood there for a moment, then climbed into the driver's seat and pulled away without looking back. That night, I walked through each room, picking up the pieces she'd tried to scatter. I hung Daniel's graduation photo back on the wall by the stairs, lit a candle in the kitchen, and sat at the table. The house felt different now, still grounded. For the first time since the funeral, I could breathe without listening for footsteps. It was mine again, entirely mine.